If there's something we've noticed about the PlayStation 4, it's that recently it has been slamming us with high-quality exclusive games. Now, obviously that's a matter of taste, so I'm not telling you have to like those games, but I tend to respect work that obviously took a lot of effort, regardless of who made it, and we've been seeing that a lot on the PlayStation 4 console. But why? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx we ask the question, how is Sony managing to get so many great exclusives? Now, a tempting answer to this question is that Sony shells out the big bucks for them good exclusives. But that's not really it. I mean, it's not untrue. Regardless of how a game is made, it does cost money to do it, but it's not that Sony just calls up people and be like, hey, instead of bringing out some of them games on the other console, why don't you just bring out them on our console, here's some money. I mean, I'm not saying that never happens, but you'd actually probably be fairly surprised how little that happens with the number of high-quality exclusives that Sony has. First off, let's just go ahead and say this. Sony doesn't turn on their first-party devs. 2017's Horizon Zero Dawn was a phenomenal game that was created by Guerrilla Games, a wholly owned subsidiary of Sony Interactive Entertainment, who most famously worked on the Killzone series, which is not a bad series by any means, but certainly not as good as Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon was a huge payoff for Sony, and it's clear they saw the potential there. But Sony's also done less easy to justify things like allowing Media Molecule to reboot Dreams multiple times. It's a game that looks amazing and looks to really take advantage of so many things. It was announced in 2013 along with the PlayStation 4 and has just continually evolved over the course of the PlayStation 4's life. The game's supposedly coming out this year, and frankly, whatever it turns out being, I'm glad they've allowed it the chance to be what it needs to be. Obviously, first parties are important for exclusives, but they also constantly reach out to indie developers who are creating games and attempt very hard to court them towards the PS4, giving assistance, both in the actual work of porting as well as in advertising and publicity. Now, since streamlining the process for submitting an indie game for PS4, there's been a few interesting titles that have come out, and by interesting, I mean outright bad. I'm talking to you, Life of Black Tiger. But it's also enabled them to work very hard on keeping a foot in the indie game scene. Well, it hasn't worked out as well for Microsoft. Over the years, you've seen high-profile indie games like The Witness ending up as a timed PS4 exclusive, as well as smaller games like Vlambeer's Devolver Digital published Luftrausers. Now, it may not surprise you knowing that this approach happened over the last few years that Sony's restructured with a focus on exclusives. Back in March, they put out a press release saying that they were changing their organizational structure for the purpose of reinforcing its business and operational strength. According to the press release, the highest priority is creating the quote-unquote most attractive and powerful first-party titles. Starting back on April 1st, all of the changes to their structure went into play, which I won't go into the business details of this press release, but the intention was to ensure coordination between organizations and support functions that are overseen locally. That's a direct quote. It basically means the organizational structure has been optimized to ensure that the various first-party organizations have the easiest time possible communicating with each other and with home base. And that kind of focus on ensuring that the people that are working for them aren't left out in the cold make them very exclusive focused. If it matters to keep everybody in the loop about the exclusives that are being developed and also ensure communication between departments and various studios, Sony ends up with less problems overall as things are being developed. Expectations are very clear and everybody's on the same page. If you've ever worked in any kind of organization at all, you know that that's heavily important for a good, healthy work environment. And although obviously these are changes that have been talked about doing officially recently, usually when something like this happens, it's because they've been moving in that direction anyway and it's been benefiting them, and it's hard to imagine that's not the case with Sony as is. Now, the most competitive among us tend to note that Microsoft tries to emulate Sony a little bit as far as this goes. They talk about having exclusives that won't be ready for 2 to 3 years, and they say things like there's no point in showing them, but it's not as if they actually don't have a decent first-party lineup. It's just, as much as I really want to play Crackdown 3, the mention of it kinda makes me go, come on, like, do you have something else? And then you ask further and something else turns out to be Sea of Thieves, and you're like, well, that's actually in the wrong direction from Crackdown 3. It's something that came out and isn't good instead of something that looks incredible and just won't come out no matter how much we want it. I just want Crackdown 3. Sorry for the outburst. I'm sure anybody else who wants that game too, though, can understand my frustration. And as much as, say, Dreams has taken a lot of time to create, I don't know that anybody is really like that about Dreams. Crackdown 3 is essentially the same story as far as development, but I don't really have the wait and see approach with Crackdown 3 anymore. Like, when it comes out, I'm sure it's gonna be good, but I don't get my hopes up ever for it at this point. And also, if we want to go back to, like, let's say Rise, which was a really cool looking game that came out along with the Xbox One that turned out not to be that great. I mean, it's understandable why people would say that Microsoft's first party / exclusive library is leaving us with something to be desired. I can only play Halo so many times and still care the same way I did, but that's also not to say there aren't cool games like Quantum Break or Sunset Overdrive that have come to the console. Personally, I don't give a crap about console or company or platform. I'm purely interested in the games, but if we're talking about exclusives, reasons that you exclusively have to buy the Xbox One, Microsoft has been a little bit unlucky. Of course, they do have Cuphead, and Cuphead is freaking amazing. Ultimately, indeed, the Xbox One does have some good games, but they don't have a roster of games that are just continually showing up on a constant basis. There could very well be another Bloodborne being announced at this year's E3, we don't know, and that would be a Sony exclusive most likely. But we know for a fact that the new Spider-Man game is coming, and it looks amazing. On top of that, a really incredible reboot of God of War just happened that is just, in my opinion, begging for more games like it. And Sony might even be expanding Naughty Dog or creating a side studio to collaborate with them in order to continue the Uncharted series. Frankly, Sony's first-party stuff is good, and they have a lot going on behind the scenes at any given time. It makes sense if you're looking forward to what's coming on the PlayStation 4 console, even as this console generation is starting to age. And while certainly Nintendo has nailed the Nintendo Switch on a lot of similar principles, a healthy video game market is going to include more than one company doing this right. And that's not even to say that Microsoft is doing it wrong, they're just not doing as much. We do have to remember that consoles themselves are becoming less of a necessity and more just a thing that you use to play a game in an easy way compared to doing it on the PC that is often looked at as less powerful or inferior even. And these developers are going to have reasons for these consoles to exist going forward. Sony has absolutely established that they're committed to doing that. What are you looking forward to on the Sony PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro? Leave us a comment, let us know what you think, and if you're not subscribed, now would be a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.